Hello, traders. Cousin Penny coming to you from theclosingprint.com, Sunday, the 20th of April, 2025. Happy Easter. In this edition of your weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the put skew flattening, suggesting the market's not pricing in more downside at the current time. In addition, Japan, South Korea, and India will be talking about deals with the U.S. this week, leaving us with 9 bullish indicators, 5 neutral, and 6 bearish for the week ahead. Finally, we have earnings with 117 companies reporting this week, heavy on the industrials, after Netflix led the communications sector higher after the close on Thursday. At the close on Friday, put skew had flattened substantially, indicating a lack of concern for more downside compared to previous weeks, leaving the S&P 500 flat for the week, establishing a new range over the last 6 trading days. RSI is still below 50, so we'll look for positive developments from tariff negotiations with Japan, South Korea, and India this week. In addition to 117 companies reporting earnings, dominated by industrials and more financials. We'd like to see the latter climb back above the 200-day moving average and for RSI to continue higher. Looking forward to more positive outcomes like Netflix bestowed on the markets on Thursday. That said, the New York FANG components were mixed last week with the exception of Netflix and Apple, with the index closing down nearly 1.5% for the week. All things considered, the small caps actually started to perform fairly well last week, with the index gaining 2.63% by Friday's close. MACD is turning along with stochastics. RSI still a little reluctant to climb. If we could start to see trend improving and more small caps reporting good earnings, it could lead to some more broadening in the markets and higher prices for investors. And as far as the international markets, we did note that many were bouncing off of lows and outperforming, with Mexico looking for a push through the recent highs as we look for momentum to continue into the weeks ahead. We've seen positive developments in high-yield corporate and junk bonds over the last week, with both climbing above key support levels. In this case, high-yield corporate climbing back above the 200-day moving average, headed to the 50-day with RSI rising, momentum shifting, giving the credit markets a much-needed relief with the 10-year fading. It did bounce back to the 50-day moving average, but the fade is helping the credit spread between high-yield corporate and the 10-year yields, where we were much wider during the pullback that we saw from February into the end of March. So this is a bullish development, along with the U.S. dollar hanging out below 100, leaving gold at highs to end the week. Additional commodities and also crude oil managed to bounce last week as well, so we'll look for this current trend to hopefully dissipate in the short term. Currently, commodities and currencies are mixed, with positive developments coming from the credit markets to start the week. As we mentioned in the opening monologue, we have 117 companies reporting this week. A very large portion are from the industrial sector and financials, so we'd like to see those two continue, along with the other sectors, move back above their bearish 20 and 50-day moving averages, blue and red lines respectively. We did see some positive developments in retail as well, so if you're trading Costco, Walmart, TJ Maxx, or some of the other retailers, you may want to keep an eye on your positions. We'd look for more of this bullish performance to continue into the weeks ahead. With Netflix announcing earnings on Thursday, we had a positive response, the stock trading above 1,000 after hours. We'll look for that to continue this week, along with some of the other stocks on the IBD 50 listed below as potential candidates, looking for gold to give us a signal whether or not there's a fade there or if these stocks continue higher as well. ADMA populating the IBD 50 list for the last few weeks. This is a biologics company, healthcare related, with 250% earnings growth noted and revenue growth of 59% into the last report. The company doesn't report again until June 2nd. Watch for ADMA to continue this thrust that started off of that 50-day bounce, move back through the 20-day moving average as volume increased. American Waterworks also looking very strong, pushing above its 20-day moving average last week. Looking for a follow-through. 50 days above the 200-day, 921-day. All moving averages are stacked. RSI rising. We just need to see more volume like we had back in late February, early March. And for MACD and stochastics to continue higher. Grinder also showing up on the IBD 50 with a relative strength rating of 97. Climbing on the weekly and the daily. About to break to new highs. Internet dating app. You know what it's all about. Breaking out last week above $19.20. Earnings have been growing, with the 2024 loss finally flipping to a positive in 2025 with 151% earnings growth and volume increasing. Carmen Holdings in the aerospace and defense sector, IPO, continues to show strength, noting 2025 increase in earnings 289% into 2026, slowing a bit, but looking for performance from this IPO, Carmen Holdings, aerospace and defense. Make My Trip, internet-based online travel services based out of India. It reports again on May 14th, moving back above all the key moving averages. RSI is rising. Earnings beginning to show positive growth again in 2025 and forecasted to grow into 2026. Netflix also reporting earnings after the close on Thursday. The stock made it as high as 1,024 and change and then settled right around 1,005 per share. As we look for a follow-through this week, RSI had been climbing into earnings and volume was increasing before earnings were reported, with 26% earnings growth forecasted for 2025. Netflix management also mentioned on the earnings call that they are off to a positive start, with revenue and operating income growth 13% and 27% year over year, respectively, both ahead of guidance, sustaining healthy revenue and profit growth into the second quarter. Also watching Palantir, hanging out above the 50-day moving average, watching for RSI to continue and for volume to pick up. Stochastics and MACD signaling we are flat at the moment along with a tight Bollinger Band setup. So we need to see some improvement Monday, Tuesday. If we start to see positive developments from tariff talks, hopefully lifting the markets, along with that flat put skew indicating that we could see markets rise on Monday. Rhythm Pharmaceuticals also showing up on the IBD 50, grinding higher. 921-day have crossed up through the 50 and the 200-day moving averages. Volume 2 weeks ago suggested we could see more follow-through this week. Rhythm reports again on May 28th, looking for prices to head back up to these 52-week highs, near $69, $70 per share. Okay, traders, that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com. Easter Sunday, the 20th of April, 2025. I'll send out a watch list later tonight around 12 midnight on the East Coast, around 9 o'clock p.m. on the West Coast. So be sure to check your inbox for that. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, and we'll see you in the morning. Ciao.